Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Cali Culture Podcast. In today's episode, I sit down with guest Mario Aguilar from California, USA. Now, Mario's been living in Cali, Colombia since 2017. He's an entrepreneur and he works remotely from Cali. He's going to give us a unique perspective about being an immigrant in Cali. Upon reaching Cali in 2017, Mario could not speak Spanish. And so he had to navigate through learning how to speak Spanish, learning the customs, learning the culture, and he's going to tell us all about that unique process. If you're thinking about coming to Cali, you definitely want to listen. So without further ado, episode 6, Listen and Learn.
Welcome everyone to the Cali Culture Podcast Show. This is episode 6. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. And we have a very special guest, as indicated in the intro. Mario Aguilar is a friend of mine. He lives in Cali. So he's going to give you a first-hand perspective in regards to how to navigate, how to assimilate in the culture, and ultimately how to be an expat. Without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Mario Aguilar. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. How's it
What's
going,
going
guys? Welcome everyone to the show. As I don't know if people may know this or not, but this will actually be my second time on the podcast as a guest.
That is correct. One of the very first videos that we did before it was a formal podcast, you were on the show, and it was a really good show, by the way. I still get really good comments and feedback from that show, and I know it's going to be the same today. We have a lot to talk about, to say the least. So let's just get right into it. Mario, for those that don't know you, can you give a brief intro to the audience and let them know who you are, where you're from, when you moved to Cali, and then what you do in Cali now?
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm from California, born and raised in the surrounding areas of Los Angeles. If people are familiar with the San Gabriel Valley, that's where I'm from. I'll just kind of catch you guys up over the last decade or so of my life. I've been working in social media, in content creation, online digital marketing. Um, Around 2017 is when I decided I wanted to move to Colombia for an extended period of time. I hadn't really decided on where yet, but I had visited Medellin and Cartagena on vacation, and I thought it was more than worth the opportunity to try to live in Colombia for an extended period of time. So 2017, I decided to visit Cali, Colombia for about a month. Um, and I had an amazing time. In the course of that month, I figured that it was a place that I could definitely see myself living in for an extended period of time. And so that was in about April to May 2017. I came back home to Los Angeles after that trip, and I was just basically organizing my stuff to move back to Cali for a longer extended period of time. I had given myself at that time a year. I said, let me go and live in a different place of the world for a year. Being a California born and raised individual, I felt like I was at the right point of my time, of my life, the right time in my life to basically, be able to travel, live in a different country for a long period of time, like a year. And being born and raised in the same, California suburb, and then living most of my adult life in Los Angeles, just felt like I needed a change. They wanted to get outside, get a taste of what life was like outside of the United States. And for me, being Latino, a Mexican American, born and raised here in California, I felt like I wanted a Latino experience outside of the United States. So all that put together, that's kind of like in a nutshell how I got to where I am now, and how I made that decision to go over to Colombia.
Excellent. And how did that decision come about, though? Like, you were a traveler just like myself, and you had traveled to other countries besides Colombia. Why Cali, though, Mario? Why did you decide Cali in particular? Because as you indicated, you gone to Medellin, you go to Cartagena. So you have been to other cities within Colombia, and you've been to other countries.
Yeah.
South America, and or the Caribbean? Why Cali, Colombia?
I couldn't at the time that I was making that decision. I wouldn't have been able to put my finger on exactly why. Aside from, I had in my travels to Medellin and Cartagena, I came back. Those took place maybe a year prior to me taking that month-long trip to Cali, and
Hmm.
so I had met women that I was, going out with when I was on vacation there. Like I may have met them, going out to the club or whatever, and so we stayed in touch. That led me to get more in touch with people over Facebook and start using Facebook sort of like a dating app,
Hmm.
to kind of meet people in Colombia, in and around Colombia. I eventually met a girl through Facebook that lived in Cali, and so I was like, "Hey, I'm ready to go back to Colombia. I don't have much knowledge
Yeah.
about other cities besides Medellin or Cartagena,
Hmm.
so just talking to this one person basically sparked my interest in Cali because she said, "Well, I can actually trace it back to one thing. If I did, it's the desire, or it was the desire for me to learn salsa. So, like
Mm.
as I mentioned, I'm a Mexican American American born citizen, but I was raised in an environment where my generation, I'm a third generation Mexican American.
Hmm.
We'd already stopped speaking Spanish in the home. I grew up listening to my grandparents speaking Spanish and my mom speaking to them in Spanish, but the barrier of language stopped at my generation. So there was a desire internally to, learn better Spanish. And I thought, like, if I was going to learn it, I had to immerse myself in a South American country. And so that's why South America. But I also had, at the time that I was traveling a lot, I was working for Univision in their digital content department, and I had this really like urgent desire at the time to dance salsa, to be a good dance salsa dancer. So as I started to learn a little bit more about Colombia and talking to this girl from Cali, she mentioned if you want to learn salsa, there's no better place in the world than Cali, Colombia. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, met her, knew that it was the salsa capital of Latin America, of the
Hmm.
world in general. And so I said, that's good enough for me. Let's go try it out for a month.
Nice. So you tried it out for a month, and were you immediately hooked, or was it like a transition period where you went back to the states, you came back, and it was like, I could really do this. I'm really feeling Cali. Well, how
I
was that?
wouldn't. I definitely wouldn't say I was immediately hooked. That's for sure. Because there's such a. I had traveled to, like we mentioned, to Medellin and Cartagena. But imagine, you know, in the span of, let's say, 7 or 8 days, you spend 4 or 5 in Medellin and 2 or 3 in Cartagena. At least
Yeah.
that was my experience. And it's a very different feel when you're on a short-term vacation like that than when you go and you realize, you touch foot off the plane and you're like, oh, I'm about to be here for a month. So
Yeah.
it's a different feeling. You settle in a different way, and there's such a culture shock from the, I guess, the like the comforts and amenities that we're used to in the United States, at least that I was used to living in Los Angeles. And so that initial culture shock, I wouldn't say was something that I said, oh, I gotta experience this for the rest of my life. It was definitely a couple weeks of getting used to the the big differences between the United States and Cali, Colombia. And we'll talk more in depth about those specific things. But
Right.
in general, as I was arriving, it was, I would say, a 1 to 2 week getting to know you phase of, like, okay,
Hmm.
like, this is how things operate here. This is how, I mean, it's pervasive. It's everything from, this is how traffic is, and this is how late the supermarkets stay open, and this is where the busy side of town is, and this is where the rich side of town, all of that, like getting used to a,
Right.
a place,
Hmm.
all of that in the first couple weeks. But I can say this: by the end of the month that I stayed there, I was convinced that I could definitely live a year or more in Cali, Colombia. So that was what I set my intentions to do.
Interesting. So, how difficult was it? I mean, you live in California. California is, I think, one of the busiest states in America, and there's always a lot to do. There's, obviously, you can go to the beach in California. How was that transition, though? I mean, transition to go from California to Cali. Cali, there's no beach in Cali, at least not in within a 2 hour radius. and Cali's warm. I would go venture to say is humid. How was that transition of just going from the USA, California specific, to Cali, Colombia? Would you say that was
Um,
difficult or easy, or was it just a
I
process
think I
you
think
went
from a from like a climate and like a climate perspective, it was very similar to California, right?
through?
California, we're known for having 80% of the year bright sky, bright sunny skies. So that weather thing wasn't a big not
Oh,
used to that. So there's a big difference in the humidity between the tropical climate of the equator and Cali, Colombia, and California is a little different. But it actually gets more. We get hotter temperatures in California, but I probably sweat more in Cali, Colombia, at least at first. Like so. That's a pro tip for all you new visitors there. If you go to Cali and you're a sweater at home, you're gonna be even more of a sweater. You'll be a hyperhidrosis patient in Cali, Colombia. So bring a towel.
definitely bring your time and remember to hydrate too. Constantly hydrate when you walk in Cali.
Absolutely.
So you are an entrepreneur. Uh, you are not only an entrepreneur, but you work obviously remotely. Um, how has that experience been? Because there's a lot of people that ask me questions. Like when I do private consultations with people that want to come to Cali, the first question they ask is, how easy or how difficult is it to
Right.
work remotely from Cali? Is the Wi-Fi good? Things of that nature. So, for those viewers that might have that question, can you shed some light on your remote work in Cali?
Yeah. Um, so I want to say, yeah, it was definitely post COVID where the like whole remote working and working from home sort of wave occurred, right? But
Hmm.
we're talking like when I went to Cali, Colombia for semi permanently was around 2017. So, a lot of people weren't necessarily taking advantage of remote opportunities, or if they were few and far between. It wasn't like the standard, or wasn't a large portion of the workforce doing that type of stuff at that time. So I knew that I was, in a unique position, and I had a favorable position because, long story short, I had a really good corporate job that laid people off. I was one of those people that was like, "Hey, we're not continuing with this project anymore, but here's 4 or 5 months severance." Everyone had a pretty nice retirement package, which I said, "Hey, I'm gonna cash that retirement package out and go see how long it'll last me in Colombia."
Right.
So I knew that I definitely had like a unique and favorable experience and position, like at that time, an opportunity to kind of do something like this. But it's very interesting that I put up a video on my own personal Instagram as a test, maybe about 2 years ago or so, and I just wanted to talk about the actual phenomenon of working remotely in Colombia, right? And
Hmm.
I pretty much led off my video talking about work remotely in Colombia, but I was really just trying to show one of the main reasons why is the difference in the cost of living in Colombia versus the United States. And so what I did was I highlighted the fact that my apartment only costs about like $220 a month in rent.
Wow.
And so the video got a lot of traction, got over like 100,000 views, and generated maybe like, I don't know, 2,000 comments or something like that. So these long chain interactions in the comment thread asking specifically about like how do I work remotely in Colombia? Like how do I get it set
Mhm.
up? So I know it's a really big point of interest from people who are thinking about not just traveling, but they want to do the digital nomad thing, or they want to be an entrepreneur and be able to work from any part of the globe, right? So
Right.
without going into without going into taxes, because that's your own responsibility. And here's the disclaimer: like, if you are working remotely outside of the United States, it's a very specific tax situation that you should obviously ask a professional about, because you can, if you stay too long outside the country, be in a situation where you actually owe taxes in two different countries, right? And
Right.
so you have to make sure that your paper trail is set up correctly before you even begin this sort of thing. But
Hmm.
if you are thinking about it and you want to do what I did, maybe like do it for a month outside of the country to see if you can work remotely in another country, be it Colombia or any other country, for a month or so, I think you could pretty much pull that off. If you are an independent professional, if you do create your own hours already, you do work from home already, um, that's going to be the best bet. If you're an employee of a company that works from home, that's going to be a little bit harder. You're going to get into a little bit more of a complicated situation because depending on your employer, they may actually be able to locate where you're logging in from.
Hmm.
And certain employers do not want their work from home employees to be working outside of the country for security issues, for data issues, for connectivity, and also because of what I mentioned earlier, because they sometimes can be liable for taxes in other countries if they have certain employees working in other countries. And if not liable for taxes, at least liable to present the proper documentation that these
Hmm.
people are foreigners working outside of the country, things like that. So I would say if you can do it short term and you have the means to do it and you're already in an occupation where you work independently, you probably have the easiest path to start trying to work remotely in Colombia.
Hmm.
But if you are an employee that just works from home or works remotely, I would suggest you ask your people in charge at your employer, like what is the policy regarding that and things like that, or if you can find that information out before you make the move, you'll be in a better situation.
Absolutely. And just to emphasize the point you made, if your employer does not want you to work outside the U.S. and you do that, that is a risk to your job. Because if they find out, and they have ways of finding out, if they find out, then you could be terminated. So, you got to think. Yes, you want to work remotely. It would be a dream for a lot of people to work in Colombia, work
Totally.
remotely in Colombia. But don't risk your job. Do the
Yeah,
research.
absolutely.
Reach out to Mario. He can give you more information. By the way, go ahead and tell him your Instagram, Mario.
Oh yeah. You guys can follow me at my Instagram. It's basically my entire name, including my middle name, Mario Reyes Aguilar, all together like that, on Instagram. So Mario Reyes Aguilar.
Excellent. Now, I want to talk about something that a lot of content creators shy away from, and that is the fact that there are a lot of passport bros that are obviously coming to Colombia, and they're showing all the glitz and the glamour and the girls and the parties and the bottles out in the clubs, but they're not really telling the whole perspective, and that is that if you don't have things planned, if you haven't really considered your life and how you're going to make money and how you're going to make ends meet, then moving to Colombia just on a whim might not be the best thing to do. It might not be the most wise thing to do. Can you just you've already kind of touched on this? Will you just touch on that a little bit more? The fact that there seems to be this whole notion of passport bro, rock star lifestyle, and everything's going to fall in place. Uh, with your knowledge and your experience, and the fact that you've seen a lot of people come to Colombia and Cali in particular, why does that particular attitude and that particular mindset not work?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last 5 or 6 years or so, the passport bro culture, it's dominated a lot of online media. Because it gets clicks. It's very sensational.
Hmm.
Um, there's I don't need to name them. I'm sure anyone who's interested in this type of travel content has probably come across several different YouTube channels or TikTokers or Instagrammers that exploit the sensationalist aspect of many countries, especially countries in South America and countries even in Africa, where quote unquote it's extremely dangerous, right? And so they're exploiting a lot of sensationalism, but in the undertones of each and every one of these sort of like viral videos is that, like, if they're basically showing you, hey, they think it's dangerous, but it's not that dangerous. Look, I'm here, I'm recording, I'm going into the dangerous barrios, and I'm going to the most slummy neighborhoods I can find in all of these countries. And then the undertones of that type of content is that, like, and the women are easy, right? Because you're a traveler, you've got money, and this is the presentation of, like, kind of the undertones that I see when I'm watching quote unquote passport bro
Right.
content. And I mean, understandable. That type of stuff gets attention and views. But I would say it's a lot of falsehoods, right? It's a lot of
Mhm.
falsehoods. Um, you know, don't get me wrong. Like I mentioned, the first time I experienced Colombia, it was Medellin and Cartagena. So for those who aren't familiar, in Medellin, we were staying in the most known place, which is El Poblado, and inside of Poblado is Parque Lleras, which is known
Mhm.
as like the place surrounded by discotecas, like so all the clubs surrounding this one city square, where essentially all of the prostitutes hang out, trying to get American foreigners to go out with them. Um, and that's been the case, going on at least 10 years now. Because when I went to visit in 2016, it was like that, and it had been like that. And then when I went to Cartagena, it's the same thing, right? So it's there's a very specific area, and it's a very specific moment, time of the night when things start to really progress. So I get it, right? That type of thing does exist. However, in Cali, there's nothing like that, right? So like that was an immediate difference where Cali seemed to me to be much more of like in Spanish, just like you would call it a pueblo. Like in
Mhm.
English, it'd be like it's a small town vibe,
Yeah.
right? You get a small town vibe from Cali, Colombia, and so there really was no central location where all the quote unquote passport bros would come to like
Mhm.
look for women, right?
Right.
Now, that's not to say that that doesn't happen in Cali, but the presentation was different. The experience as a traveler was very different.
Right.
That type of stuff in Cali, you would have to seek that out and go kind of figure out where to find that,
Mhm.
which there would be no shortage, just like most Latin American countries, right? When you get
Right.
into a major metropolitan city, and the taxi driver knows that you're new in town, they're going to offer everything under the sun just to see if they
Yeah.
can make an extra buck besides the taxi fare, right? So
Right.
these are traveler things that I think if most people who are into this type of content have traveled already, you probably
Mhm.
pretty much know.
Right.
But in respect to how it's presented in Passport Bro content, I think it's a little bit exaggerated and played out
Mhm.
at this point. And personally, I think it's doing more of a disservice, that type of content, to the locations that are actually really beautiful cities. There are actually a lot of really good food, and there's a lot of really good people to meet in all of these locations that don't necessarily have to be exploited for the fact that they're part of the red light district of a particular city, or that they live in a like one of the most dangerous neighborhoods that you can imagine, right? And so
Yeah.
these are the things that I wish these content creators would go a little bit beyond that type of stuff,
Mhm.
because there's definitely a lot more to show, and these cities, not just Cali, Colombia, but various countries throughout Latin America, have a lot more to offer than just the sensationalist sex and violence.
Absolutely. And with that being said, I I wanted to touch on the fact that because passport bros have brought this negative stigma, that I have to be honest, Mario, I do get a lot of feedback from locals, even locals in Cali, that say, yeah, we appreciate your content. We like what you do. You seem to be a really upstanding American. However, when you Americans look what you all did to Medellin, look what you all did to Cartagena. You're starting fights. You're soliciting working girls. We don't want that in Cali, so we don't want any tourism. And I'll say very few people have given that feedback out of probably 100 people in the last month I talked to, maybe one or two. But it is a concern with some individuals in Cali. So my question to you is an increase in tourism a good thing in Cali, or could an increase in tourism potentially cause what happened in Medellin to happen in Cali? Do you ever foresee a situation like that in Cali?
Right. You know, as someone who, I don't know if we've mentioned this yet in the podcast, but ever since I decided to go and stay in Cali for that year, I'm basically been there. So now I'm going on a little more than 8 years living semi-permanently in Cali. But so I've seen, since the beginning to now, I've seen a huge increase let me restate that. It's not a huge increase, but I've seen an increase in tourism to Cali specifically,
Mhm.
because um, Medellin and Cartagena still are the two most sought destinations in
Mhm.
Colombia, and Colombia over the last 2024 and 2025 have reached record levels of tourism to the country. So we're going on a third consecutive year as far as I think at the end of the first quarter of 2026, they'll release some of the projections for tourism for this year. But I
Mhm.
mean, if the pattern is the same, we're going to see another record year of tourism to Colombia in general.
Right.
My Cartagena and Medellin still remain the two most popular destinations. So Cali is still I believe by population, it's the third most populous city in Colombia.
Correct.
But in terms of
Mhm.
tourism, it's probably number 4 or 5 down on the list because don't forget, Bogota is the country's capital and still
Right.
has a lot of tourism
Right.
due to commerce and industry because it's one of the biggest financial hubs of Colombia as well. So
Mhm.
when you get down that list of potential destinations and you get to Cali, you don't have the you don't have what I would call like the very obvious influx of foreign tourism, right?
Right.
That you would have in not just Medellin and Cartagena, but other cities like Ciudad Mexico. You know,
Mhm.
Ciudad Mexico right now is experiencing a lot of the similar types of stuff where locals are just saying enough is enough. We don't want any
Mhm.
more gringos here. Like, they're tired of the Airbnb hustle that goes
Right.
on in these like more touristy cities. And so I don't see that occurring in Cali
Mhm.
as rapidly, but it is increasing. And there is more of it today than there was 7 or 8 years ago, for sure.
Yeah, and to that end, for those of the audience and viewers that are listening that live in Cali or local to Cali, let me just say that this podcast and this platform is not intended to really increase tourism. This podcast and this platform, the whole objective is to ensure that we get good tourism in Cali. Because really, it's all about the type of people that come to Cali from other countries. If you get people like Mario, like other people that we know within our circle, well, we don't start fights. We're not out chasing girls and all of that. We don't do that. We love the culture in Cali, and so it's all about promoting and showcasing the culture, so you can attract good tourism. That's really the objective. Is been the objective, and that's what we continue. Now, Mario, to your end, what would you say to the passport bros out there that maybe have that mentality that they love the El Poblado, or they like the Sosua Dominican Republic, that they like that type of entertainment? What would you tell them in regards to Cali?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't want to like douse the flames of anyone's, inspirations to come visit not just Colombia, Cali, and Latin America,
Mhm.
because that Latin American tourism from the United States has increased dramatically in this whole passport bro era. So I'm not trying to
Mhm.
say don't come, right? But I want to say don't come with those exploitative behaviors and
Mhm.
attitudes. You know, I when we were talking earlier about the types of passport content that exists and it's exploitative and sensationalist, like it. I don't know if you've seen much of that content recently, but I have a buddy who's actually in the United States, and we made a online friendship through the video that I posted, and he reached out and asked me a bunch of questions about traveling. He had also been to the Dominican Republic several times. He'd been to Medellin and Cartagena and Brazil as well, and so we talk about that like male perspective of like, I at the time when I decided to go to Cali was 37 years old, single with no kids. And so part of my intention of my experience that I wanted to have was to meet beautiful women and go out with beautiful Colombian women. And
Right.
that's what my purpose was. But I didn't go with that attitude of a passport bro that's like, yo, let's go hit up the strip clubs and see who we could take home, with us tonight.
Right.
That kind of, I did not have that type of vibe. My
Right.
entire vibe was to like experience the culture, live in a new city, get to know people, and eventually go out on dates with women that I meet.
Right.
The actual old school way of meeting people.
Hmm.
And so that was the perspective I had. And so any advice that I would give to anyone who would, first of all, I would say if you consider yourself to be a passport bro, stop it. Just stop saying I'm a passport bro. One, that's going to help a lot.
Yeah.
And two would be like, come with that type of perspective that like, yeah, you know what? This is actually an amazing opportunity to meet new people in ways that, for my opinion, my perspective in Los Angeles, ways that almost don't exist anymore in Los Angeles on how to meet someone. So I'm
Hmm.
sitting here participating in your podcast from a cafe in Pasadena, California. And
Hmm.
I think that if I walked up to a woman in here and said, hello, hey, I don't live in this neighborhood, but can you tell me, is there a good yoga spot around here? They probably would not be as inclined to give me information or
Right.
consult me on that type of opening line or things like that, because there's
Right.
this metropolitan sort of like defense mechanism that I think a
Right.
lot of women in the United States have, and
Hmm.
by you know for good reason in some cases, many cases.
Yeah.
But my point is that like that type of normal community conversation happens in Colombia all the time, right? And so
Yeah.
what I found is as I was living there, if I was in the supermarket, or if I was at the mall, or if I was in a new place and I just had some questions and I wanted to go up and ask somebody, I could ask the most beautiful girl in the room, and
Hmm.
more likely than not, she's at least going to engage me in a conversation,
That's
right?
right.
And so that is what I would say to passport bros. That's your real advantage if you're really looking for romance. You're
Hmm.
really looking for a place where like you want to find a beautiful woman who aligns with the way that you see the world, but from a
Hmm.
different perspective, and they can open your eyes to new experiences and maybe teach you Spanish and teach you how to dance salsa and all that good stuff. Like you could
Right.
still do all that, but I would
Yeah.
say come at it with a more of like I'm here to learn about the culture and
Right.
blend in with the culture, respecting the culture, rather
Hmm.
than like I'm here for 2 weeks only and I'm gonna get it in while I can. That's a bad attitude I think to have when you come to any country, but specifically Cali, Colombia.
I totally agree with that, and you're exactly right. The people in Cali are warm. The women are warm, and you're exactly right. It could be what we would consider a perfect 10. Beautiful, and she will at least and 9 times out of 10 will engage in a conversation with you. Now,
Yeah,
passport bros, you have to keep this in mind. No good woman is just going to fall in your arms. So that's a common misconception. That's the reason why I don't like the content. Is a guy goes out there and then these two women just fall in his arms, and that's not how it works. In real life, a woman with a 9 to 5 that's got is career oriented, goal oriented. She's probably in the gym, or she's in a yoga class, or she's in a cooking class, or she's at home. Like that's the real world Colombia. And so you're gonna have to put in work, and you're gonna have to learn the culture to have access to those type of women. So that's just a little bit of free game for you. Now, Mario, I want to transition and talk about, like, we got to talk about everything, right? And so on this podcast, I believe in talk about the 360 of full span of Colombia. So then we have to talk about the fact that there has been a lot of violence in the past year in Cali. Because that's the other question I always get asked is, well, we heard this, that there was a shooting or a bombing or whatever in Cali, and we don't believe that it's safe to go to. There's a gentleman that reached out to me the other day, and he really wants to come to Cali, him and his wife, but he just thinks it's too dangerous. And so, what is your opinion on the danger level and the safety in Cali? Can you address that for the viewers? The people that are thinking about really wanting to come to Cali, but they have heard. And let's just be honest here. There has been some events that's happened over the
yeah,
past 6 months to a year in Cali. What do you say to the people that want to come, but they're concerned for their safety?
yeah. I think the first thing I would say is like most people would benefit from doing a quick read on what is the actual political environment in Colombia, more so than the cultural side. Even if you want to get a sense of like, okay, am I really going to a dangerous place? Because I think we all know that the United States State Department lists Colombia as a like I don't know if it's an orange, maybe level
It's
3 or level
three,
4.
level
I don't know if
three.
it's a red,
Yeah.
but it's definitely up there in the like, hey, we advise you that this is a dangerous place to be in, and
Hmm.
and it's, I think on the State Department website it actually gives two main reasons. Is the um, they sort of describe like the urban violence, which is like
Hmm.
uh, there's a lot of drug gangs. There's like gangs in general, right? So like
Hmm.
they control certain neighborhoods, and so there's a lot of street violence that they want to warn you about. That you may be the victim of a robbery, or you may be in the wrong side of town at the wrong time. And this is
Hmm.
common, right, in Colombia because of the urban environment. And then there's also warnings about going into more of the secluded areas of the country. Like if you want to go ecotourism, right, and you decide you're going to go to a very desolate mountain range, there's there's a chance that you could be entering the territory of several existing armed groups that are currently in opposition to the Colombian government, right? So that's where I'm saying it'd be nice for any potential tourists to do a little bit of homework on the actual political history of that, because this
Hmm.
is something I did not know. So I went to Colombia and I decided I'm going to stay here for a year. I had no idea that the country was in a 50-year long, and it somewhat continues to this day, a 50-year long civil war. Essentially, their government is in a armed conflict with, I think the official number is over 2,000, but there's mainly 3 or 4 armed political factions that are their own armies. And Colombia, this will help you understand a little bit about why this occurs. Colombia as a country is only 30% developed. That means 70% of the land area of Colombia is very rural, desolate, jungle. It's very unpatrolled, let's just say.
Hmm.
The people who actually patrol and control a lot of these desolate areas are armed groups. So there are known places that you shouldn't go ecotourism, going if you don't have a guide or you don't know exactly where you're going to end up. There's a lot of illegal mining that occurs. These groups,
Hmm.
aside from being involved in narco trafficking, the production of cocaine in these desolate mountain regions, they also deal in illegal mining practices. So there's a
Hmm.
lot of emeralds and gold in certain areas of Colombia. And so
Hmm.
these armed groups will set up illegal mining operations, and so you just passing through, you may be in the wrong place at the
Wrong
wrong
place at
time,
the
and that
wrong
would be,
time.
yeah. And so that would be something that I would caution people against doing right now.
Right.
That being said, if you're talking about a major metropolitan area, you're going to be more concerned about that. What I was talking about, the urban street violence, than you
Hmm.
would be, getting caught up in some sort of guerrilla armies territory, right?
Right.
But both things do occur in the country, and it's better that you know about it rather than to like be there living and then be like, hey, what? There's like a bomb just went off, and so like to talk a little bit more about what happened recently at the summer of last year, there was some isolated bombing attacks where they actually placed the biggest one was a truck. So they loaded
Yeah.
a like basically a cargo truck full of explosives and
Yeah.
then detonated it right outside of a police station. So
Hmm.
one thing to know here is that the police in Colombia are a national force. So unlike the United States, where you have like the Chicago PD and the LAPD and the NYPD, they're
Hmm.
all separate departments. The police of Colombia are one national force. So they get looked at from their enemies, these guerrilla factions, as the representation of like the armed forces in
Yeah.
Colombia. And so they attack police stations. It's usually where these bombs have been placed. But
Hmm.
it's not only police stations, but that tends to be the area of attack. And so that being the case, thankfully, where I live in Cali, I was not close to where that happened. However, I do know people who live close to those areas, and I believe there was in the most violent attack, or the largest explosion that they did. I believe 6 or 7 people passed away,
Yeah.
and about 40 or 50 people were hurt in the surrounding area. But
Hmm.
yeah, so those are things that occur. Political violence in Colombia has a long history. That's another reason why I encourage people to like do a little bit of homework on the history of Colombia and
Right.
who the president is and things like that, because you know as you this is for people who have the intentions of living in Colombia longer term,
Hmm.
more than a month, 6 months to a year, that type of thing. Um, as a culture, many Colombians grew up, let's just say our age, Jeremy. They
Hmm.
grew up in the '90s,
Right.
where political violence and narco violence was at its all-time high,
Hmm.
right? So there's very deep trauma and emotional scars as a culture that people from the country of Colombia have to that type of violence, right? And so
Right.
just this recent year to have these things happen again, a lot of my personal friends were like, "Wow, this is a really sad moment for the country because it feels as though we're returning to an era that I grew up like, or that my parents had to suffer through, that type of stuff." And so,
Taking steps back as opposed
right,
to forward. Yeah.
exactly, and with all the potential that Colombia has as a worldwide destination, these put dampers on things like the overall growth of the economy the um, or the sentiment of people, foreigners, and people who live in Colombia to do more business, to invest, and things like that. Like if those types of things start to occur more often, you'll probably see more people wanting to leave Colombia, more national Colombia nationals wanting to leave and come to the United States or go to Europe for better opportunities because of the
Yeah.
security. But I mean, just speaking honestly, when you start thinking about the United States and the increase of political violence that we've seen in the United States as well, especially over the
Right.
last 2 years, I think you start to really put it in a larger lens to say like, okay, well, are we falling apart at the seams in all countries?
Right.
And then by relation, Colombia doesn't seem so bad because same thing could happen in Minnesota or same thing could happen in Los Angeles.
Right. No, you're exactly right there. I think it really what it comes down to, like you said, educating yourself. If you recall, I did a video where you did a perfect job editing about safety. No dark papaya, right? Don't give papaya. And so, you never want to wear your best shirt or a nice expensive Rolex watch, or women don't wear your designer bags, no Gucci, none of that stuff, because you're just giving um, robbers and people in criminal activity a reason to potentially rob you. And so, like, don't give them a reason for it. There's a lot of people with bad intentions out there as it is, and then when you wear something flashy or expensive, and these people don't have a lot at all. They know they could sell that. They could take that Gucci bag and sell it for, and what they would sell it for, that might be a salary for 6 months or more. So no dar papaya.
Right.
I totally agree with you. The fact that anything can happen anywhere, Mario. You're exactly right. And I think it's incumbent on the person to take in charge of their safety. In other words, if you know that you don't need to be going to Siloé, and there's not a lot of foreigners there. You don't know anybody there. There's no reason to go in that area. Stay in the areas where you know that there's policia that patrols the area, and for the most part, things don't happen. Now, again, things can happen anywhere, but again, you have to take control of your safety. And so I totally agree with you. Now, I do want to go back to the topic of tourism real quick. I know we're running out of time here, but I did want to point blank ask you: do you think tourism, an increase in tourism in Cali, would be a good thing, or could it not be so good?
Excuse me, Jeremy. Give me one second.
Sure.
Pardon me, sir. Do you mind? I'm actually picking you up on my mic. Sorry, I just politely asked the dude if he could like tone. I think he was coming out over the
Okay.
mic, so
Got
speaking
it.
excessively loudly here. But
Got it.
anyway, so can you repeat your question again? Sorry about
Okay,
that.
so yeah, no worries. The question was going back to what we were talking about tourism. I did want to point blank ask you: do you think tourism, an increase in tourism, would be a good thing, or would it could it lead to something that could be negative within Cali? I just want to know your point, your honest thoughts about potential.
Um,
We know that Cali has increased tourism a little bit in your 8 years there, but if Cali were to double their tourism tomorrow, what do you think would happen?
Yeah, I mean, you can always tell the truth of what someone's thinking with their micro expressions. And I think if we run the tape back, right when you finish that, I said, uh, nah, you know,
Yeah.
because I don't think I don't think Cali's infrastructure is ready for like a huge influx of tourism. One, right?
Yeah.
In Colombia in general, I think this is one of the things for people who are thinking longer term stays is
Hmm.
you have to take a look around you wherever you're from and say like, okay, these are the things that I'm used to from an infrastructure standpoint. This is how the roads are. This is how easily I can get from point A to point B. These are the places I can shop, and these are the places where I can stay and go. And so look at all of that that's around you, and realize that in Colombia, more than likely, regardless of the city that you choose, you're going to have less of that available. You're going to have a less availability. It's going to be harder to move around. The roads are not quite as good. There might not be an elevator in your apartment building. Those types of things, right? So think about first the change in infrastructure, the things that you're used to in the United States, and the things that you're willing to forego if you
Hmm.
plan to stay in Colombia for an extended period of time, right? So that's number one. I don't think Cali has the type of infrastructure that would appeal to a lot of tourists. You
Right.
know, you've already got to be that type of tourist that's like, hey, that's not important to me. You know, I don't need to have AC and
Hmm.
and heater, and I'm gonna get into the real. You might even get an Airbnb that doesn't have hot water. That happened to me. So like,
Yeah.
I'm already used to it. The apartment that I live in, and I've been living in for 8 years now, has no hot water. Right? People are gonna be like,
Really?
what? What? There's no hot water?
The,
Yeah.
the one
No,
you're living in now doesn't have
the
hot
one I
water?
live in now, yeah,
Wow.
I have no hot water in the apartment. Right? Now, do we need hot water? If I lived in Bogota, you probably would need hot water. Cali is warm enough most of the year that you don't
True.
miss a hot shower.
That's true.
But I'll tell you what, I don't. I'm not excited to take like an early morning shower either because that water can be very cold. But my
Yeah.
point being that if tourism were to increase in Cali overnight, double, I'm sure that there'd be a lot more stresses on the overall infrastructure. Now, would that put pressure on the owners and the property owners and the businesses of Cali
Hmm.
to improve their services or improve their infrastructure? Yeah, maybe so. But there's
Yeah.
there's always a lag in the influx of tourism and the capital that it brings into a city or a country, and then the actual good use and reinvestment of those funds into the businesses, into
Yeah.
the city infrastructure, and all of that good stuff. So I think as an experience, as a cultural experience, I think Cali would love to be the host to much more tourism because when I look
Yeah.
at what Cali has to offer, they say Bogota is the capital. So if you're going to be doing big business or you want to arrive at the financial capital of Colombia, that's Bogota. If
Hmm.
you want to, if you're into tech and maybe you're Web3 and things like of that nature, Medellin is a great city to be in as well.
Right.
I would say if tourism were to increase for Cali, it'd be two main branches. It would be the ecotourism, which is the people who
Hmm.
want to go see the mountains and the rivers and they want to go on a nature excursion. That would be amazing. And then
Right.
the cultural tourism, the people who want to
Hmm.
learn about the real salsa culture. If you want to learn about the Pacific culture of Colombia, the Afro Latin culture of Colombia,
Hmm.
Cali is one of the capitals for that, right?
Right.
If you want to learn about art, resistance, politics, music, that's what Cali really brings to the table. So I see Cali as a very big cultural hub of
Right.
Colombia, and that's even within Colombia because as I've mentioned, I've been to Bogota, I've been to Medellin, Cartagena. So
Hmm.
because of the higher amounts of tourism there, you will almost always find people who can speak English, at least just
Hmm.
to get by if you need something. When I came to Cali, I lived here for about a year and maybe found five people who spoke English. So
Right.
even in the Colombian, spectrum of things, Cali is on that real Latino, real Colombian Latino vibe, right? So you're
Yeah.
gonna get that feeling when you're here in Cali. So that is what I think. Cali is ready for that. Like they've got that in
Hmm.
abundance. And so
Definitely.
they can handle a doubling of tourism for that type of stuff. But It's got to be
Right.
the right type of people who have an open mind about where they're going, and you're not coming to Cali because you're looking for, a 5-star hotel experience.
Right. Or you're not looking for like in Cartagena, there's a lot of hip hop clubs where you can get bottle service. It's like almost being in Miami or Atlanta. You're not gonna get
Right.
that experience in
And
Cali.
it's I mean, if you're looking for that, you can find it, right? You can go get that in Cali, but I wouldn't say that's not the highlight. That's not like, when you do your little slideshow after you get back from your vacation to Cartagena, you're gonna have all of the historic zone. You're gonna have all those photos. You're gonna have the
Right.
party pictures in the club and all that stuff,
Right.
and that'll be your highlight.
Hmm.
In Cali, your highlight will be the night dancing salsa. It'll be the art, the murals that are on the wall. It'll be the most amazing view of a river, waterfall that you ever seen. Those are the types of highlights that you're
Right.
gonna get, coming to Cali.
Yep, you're exactly right, and I will just add that we do see some of that tourism coming to Cali, like the biodiversity conference last year
That's right.
was in Cali, Colombia, and then I believe it was last month the bird watching fair was in Cali. So we are seeing a lot of either biodiversity or, like you said, cultural history type of fair or workshops. And these are international things, by the way. People from all over are coming to Cali for these. We are seeing that, but as far as, like you said, the party, I call it the party tourism. I agree with you. Cali doesn't have that infrastructure, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. So we're running out of time, but I definitely want to ask you this question because I get this question a lot, and that is, how do you make friends in Cali? I got lucky that I met you, and I won't go into the long story, but me and you we joke about it all the time. But
Yeah.
essentially, viewers, I met Mario in the bar. I was on a date, and I have been wanting to go to this particular brewery for a while. Not even 2-minute walk from my apartment. And we were coming back from the date. I was like, "All right, let's pop in here real quick." And, and long story short, that's how I met Mario. So I got lucky. I met another American that lives there, and Mario's been an excellent resource and friend that point me in the right direction, and just introduced me to a lot of other people that I now consider friends. So, but in your opinion, how do you meet friends in Cali?
How
How
friendly
do you meet
are?
people in Cali to make
Oh,
friends, rather?
Oh yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about the dating scene. It's similar, for all meetups, right? Like if you go to the park or you go to a restaurant, you can just strike up a conversation with people. Most
Hmm.
Caleños, and not I'm not saying that everyone who you're going to encounter is like this, because Cali has had its own influx of lots of people who live in Cali aren't from Cali, right? There are other
Hmm.
Colombians from other parts of the country that live in Cali. But if you talk and you meet and you befriend Caleños, you will know, because they are the warmest. They will invite you. They will give you advice. If you're looking for a place, they will walk you halfway there, and make sure you're in good hands to get the rest of the way, that kind of stuff. So meeting people and making friends in Cali can happen anywhere. But some of the more popular, I would say, like some of the more easier places to meet people and make friends would be at the gym. Like
Hmm.
Cali, when I first went to Cali, I hadn't mentioned this. When I first went to Cali, I had the intentions of starting a fitness brand. I was very much into fitness at the time. I was working out 2 times a day. I was in the gym 6 days a week. Like having a really good time in my first couple of months here, just taking advantage of the free time that I had, and I got into fitness. And so Cali is one of the most sporty cities in Colombia that you will
Hmm.
encounter. So people here, it's almost as if everyone has their sport. So if you want to meet friends and you have a sport, whether you like cycling, if you like roller skating, if you
Hmm.
like jogging, if you like weightlifting, all of that, you can find it in Cali. So if you like weightlifting, you go to the gym, you'll be able to chat it up and meet people right away. If you like cycling, anything that's done outdoors, usually in Cali on Tuesdays and Thursday nights around larger parks, you get groups of people doing their sports. So you'll find 200 cyclists going around the city together. You'll find
Hmm.
55, rollerbladers who love rollerblading, and they're skating around the city all together. So
Hmm.
that's a very easy way to meet people. You and I, like you mentioned, met in the bar.
Hmm.
I found there's something that I learned in California, right? It's like if you want to make friends, go to a dive bar and go there often, right?
Yeah.
You'll make friends eventually, right?
Yeah.
People get to know you and that good stuff. And plus, you'll find a place that they'll like the cheers, like where wouldn't you like to find a place where everyone knows your name?
Yeah.
And so I found my place, and that's where you happened to stumble in that one night. And I was hoping you would finish the story because it's one of the better stories. It's like Jeremy walked in, coming from his date, and he obviously wasn't following at this time his own rules about what to wear and what not to wear in certain
Right.
areas. Although I will say this, we were in a rich neighborhood. Let's just say it
Yeah.
was a very nice,
Very
rich
nice.
neighborhood. And I just saw Jeremy and his date walk in dressed like Miami Vice, right? And Jeremy says it was like this. I
I was
don't
looking
recall, but
good though,
Jeremy
right,
says,
Mario? I was looking good,
yeah,
right?
you dress sharp. You dress sharp. For sure dress sharp.
Yeah.
And he recalls it being like he walked in and the record scratched, the music stopped, and all the people turned around to kind of look at Jeremy to be like, who is this guy, right?
That's what it felt like. It felt like everything stopped. Like you could hear a pin drop, and it's like,
Which
okay,
I kind of was sitting close by. I saw him walk in, and I think I saw him struggle to order a beer, and I
yeah,
was like, cerveza. It's called a cerveza. I was like, you don't speak Spanish, do you? And so that we made friends from that moment.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, in Cali, it's really easy. The Caleño in general, the stereotypical Caleño is a friendly person, and
hmm,
they're warm and inviting. They're gonna want to meet you and hang out. And if if you actually make friends with someone, they'll be inviting you that weekend to their grandma's birthday party. So that's
yeah.
kind of how it is.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we ran out of time, Mario. It's been an excellent podcast episode. I always say and I always allow my guests to be able to give the final closing statements before I do the outro. And since I know you're bilingual, if you will do the final statements in Spanish, would be excellent. Be our honors.
Ok, yeah, excelente. Para los que están pues mirando espero que esperamos que ustedes han disfrutado mucho del podcast. Estoy disponible si cualquier persona, si alguien quisiera pues comunicar conmigo por mis redes sociales, pues soy Mario Reyes Aguilar en Instagram. Pues les invito a todo el mundo a conocer a Cali, a Colombia en general, pero a Cali en específico, porque es de las ciudades que más me ha gustado del mundo, me ha cambiado la vida por siempre y yo me siento ya más como un caleño adoptivo o adoptado. Well, still working on my Spanish, still got things to improve, but no, if you can believe that, 7 years ago, I went there with like very little, like I thought I knew what I was talking about, but I really had no idea. And my wife, I'm married now. My wife constantly reminds me of like how bad my Spanish was when I first got there. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone who's like tuned in today. If we do have some Spanish speakers up here in the podcast, you're already a step ahead. So if you do speak Spanish, come to Colombia. You're already a step ahead. If you're going to be living or visiting in Cali, speaking Spanish is almost a must. I'm encouraging Jeremy to learn a lot more, and as he keeps coming through, every time he comes, we learn a new phrase. So, no, thank you for having
Absolutely.
me, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure, man, and I'm happy to see how much you've done with not just the podcast but the channel. For those that don't know, I helped Jeremy get this channel started over a year ago. It doesn't seem like that,
It doesn't.
but it's like it's well more than a year ago that we got this thing, and just taking it and just ran with it. I'm happy to have helped him in the beginning, but my man is doing this thing, and I'm glad that you all tune in to get this information because honestly, this is a very unique perspective,
Mhm.
and he's speaking from experience. And myself, I'm speaking from experience, and I have the same intentions as Jeremy to basically give people a better perspective on Colombian travel in general, and how to really come to Cali with your expectations set correctly.
Absolutely. And thanks. It was an honor having you on the podcast show today. Definitely gonna have to do it again in the near future, and we'll pick another topic. There's so much to talk about on Cali, Mario. We'll do another topic and definitely have you on the show again. Thank you very much, bro. And see you in Cali soon, very soon.
Man, all right, man. Yeah, yeah. I'll see you there soon. Hopefully, sometime in April.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, everyone, that's the close of our show. Thank you very much for tuning in. I want you to remember that you always should respect the culture. You should embrace the culture. You should learn the culture. You're gonna have a great time in Cali. And if you don't know the culture, you can always reach out to myself. I also want to allow you to be able to donate to good content. We do good content, positive content in regards to Cali, Colombia, because ultimately we want to be an asset to the community in Cali. We don't want to be a liability. So if you want to donate, you can donate. There's my Zelle information. There's my Cash App information. You could definitely donate, no pressure, but it definitely helps to keep things going, to keep things on the air, and to keep things positive as we always do. So, with that being said, I want to re-emphasize: if you come to Cali with an open mind. Respect the culture, embrace the culture. Respect begets respect. Remember, Cali is Cali. Always be safe. We'll see you on the next episode. And by the way, the next episode, we have a person that has just traveled to Cali over the past 2 weeks, that's back in the United States, and he's going to give you his full report on his trip to Cali, Colombia. It's going to be interesting, very interesting show next week. So stay tuned. And remember, Cali is Cali. Hasta luego.
Thank you for watching the Cali Culture Podcast with Jeremy Preston. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next week for our next episode.